What's up, buds? Fly High FPV, and I'm going to teach you how to conformal coat your drone using KotKing. This is actually going to be how to pre-coat, and that's what I always do. I take my hardware before I build, I coat everything up, and that way when I get it into the rig, the bottom sides and everything is already done. What I'm going to use here is a, ooh, got a little carbon fiber. Gonna use a busted frame. Be careful with busted frames, they have sharp bits on them. And I just got a bunch of standoffs stuck in this so that I can mount various things on it. I've got one over here for M2, and most of them are all set up for M3. I've got a flight controller, it's the T-Motor F7 HD, mounted up right here, bottoms up. And I've got my ESC, this is an F55 amp ESC. And it's going to get mounted here bottoms up too, but first I'm going to take off the heat plate. I want to take the heat plate off so that I can get up underneath and coat the whole top of the board. One thing you'll notice is that this flight controller has this like matte finish. It's kind of dull. That is not coated with anything. This ESC has a shiny finish. It's coated with something, but if you look closely at it, I don't know if you can see, but like some of these FETs don't even have any of it on them. The first time I used this exact stack from T-Motor, they told me not to conformal coat it because it already had this on there. And I was like, okay, you told me to do it, that's what I'm gonna do. So I went out, and 3 days later I fried it in the water because I immediately crashed in some water. And it got soaking wet, burnt out. So after that, when I rebuilt with conformal coating, and that one lasted me over 2 years. Anyway, let's get started. First thing we gotta do is get this heat plate off. I always start up here in this area with a old prop or nicked up prop or whatever, and sometimes these come off easily. Yeah, this is an easy one. It already popped. But I normally will work here and come back and forth. This one's already coming up nice and simple. So it'll just pop all the way off. And you can see underneath is this thermal paste. We don't need the thermal paste. We're gonna make... Well, the camera stopped rolling. But I scraped away most of the thermal paste, so these are pretty smooth and I can see all the edges of the chips. That's what's most important to me, is getting down to the edges. So then I'm going to flip it over upside down and mount up on the post here. Again, just a little standoff to help give it a place to hold it where I paint. And I don't even have gummies in this one yet. It's probably easier to do it before you put the gummies in. I always prefer to paint the bottom sides first because you're going to paint the bottom edge to edge and you're rarely soldering on the bottom sides. So this is the KotKing. The top here has a little spike. Should be able to punch it in there. Almost. Alright, that got it. Now we're oozing everywhere. Lovely. Screw the little nozzle on. Screw the nozzle on. Okay, it feels like it's biting now. Alright, so now all I do is apply with the prop. Squirt it out where you want it. Oh, this nozzle actually makes it nice and easy. The last time I bought this stuff, it did not have this handy nozzle. It just kind of spooged all over the place. But I'm just gonna spread it like putty. Get it all the way to the edge of the board. I want to make sure I get around all the edge of all these electronics. So it's not just on top of them, but all the way down around the sides. All the pads. All of these pads. Camera popped off on me, but I went ahead and did the whole ESC as well. Edge to edge again, there's nothing here that you don't want to get. So I even did all the pads. The edges of all the FETs are really important. And I like to go all the way around to the edge of the board too to make sure it's all really well covered. That's all good. It needs to dry for about an hour or so. So before I can start really working with it. And then over here is my ELRS receiver, and when I wire these up, I like to do some strain relief across the board. So I'll have the antenna wired this way, and the 4 wires are going to come this way across the board, and then the heat shrink will go over it all to protect it and lock it in. And so I'm gonna paint here, but not the pads. And I'm gonna paint everything on this side, even all up around the UFL. I don't care. This stuff is so thick, it's not gonna penetrate the UFL as long as you don't go wiggling it while it's wet. It'll just stick all around the outside and make a nice protective layer to help keep everything on. And if you need to change the UFL, you can still peel it right off and pop it free and do it, and no problem there. So I'm gonna call this the bottom since I'm soldering on this side. I'm gonna paint the bottom, which I think is actually the top. I'm gonna paint this side first, and then once I'm dry, we'll flip over and get that side too. You see that? It's tiny. There, zoom. The power of zoom. All right, so this is not going to take very much at all. Just a one little squirt, and I'm going to cover it. Build that antenna right in. No water is going to get to this receiver. Hell, well. Next thing we're going to do is the top of our flight controller. So what we want to do is look at the layout, figure out what we're using and what we're not, because we're going to pre-coat all the things that we're not using and leave open the stuff that we are using. Starting right here, the USB port, very important. We want to keep this alive. We don't want to get anything in here at all. So we're going to paint around the back and around the edge here, but we're not going to get it inside of here. So we can't put stupid amounts right here. Got to be nice and light in this area. The boot loader button, we're going to paint around the edge of it, but not entirely cover it. This bank of pads here is where I'm going to put my receiver and my connection to the 04 Pro. So I need to leave these pads all open, and after I've soldered to them, then I'll come back and close them up later. This is my main connector to my ESC, and I will be using this. I'll be using the only plug on the flight controller that I'll use is right there. So I will plug this in probably to keep it safe. Right over here, I've got the buzzer pads. I'll be using them. This row of pads I will not be using. This is like the GPS and then extra pads. I'm gonna just cover it all up. And then something else I'm not gonna be using is this connector. This is the 10 volt HD connector that you're supposed to use for your video transmitter, and I don't believe in it. I wire mine straight to VBAT for power, and then they'll get TX and RX right over here. So I'll just fill this with conformal coating and completely goo it up so that it doesn't have a chance of shorting out that 10 volt regulator that I'm not using. This right here is the transducer. It's really important that you get coating all the way around the edges of it. This is basically the thing that makes your 5-volt regulator work. So we want to make sure we protect it. I have not covered the pads here, so that's where the blade of the prop is going to really come in handy as a perfect tool to get just a thin layer aligned on that part. So yeah, that's the plan. I'm going to bolt it back down to the frame and start painting it. Alright, so I've already spread it on here and my camera didn't record it, but we're just going to walk through it again. I started right here behind the USB. I got along the edge of it with my knife edge, and along the back and along this side. But real careful not to put a whole bunch inside of there. I just scooped a little bit over from the top of this chip to get it there. The bootloader button, the same thing. I'm using the knife edge trick to get just as much as I need along the sides of it, like that. Make sure it's smeared real good all over the gyro and all these other little capacitors and chips, all across the back of this guy, all across the sides and the top. These are the pads I'm not using, so we're going to cover them completely from edge to edge. Right here is that transducer for the 5-volt regulator, and so I got all along the edge here, and the edge here, and the edge here, and the edge here. I'm super careful with my knife edge to get in there without trying to cover those pads that I'm going to use. If you do get it on the pads, you can wipe it while it's wet and smear it off, or you can wait for it till it's dry and then you can just push it off with a fingernail pretty easily. The last thing I did was this port over here. I just literally took a scoop up and shoved it in there and jammed it, and then put more on it and packed it in there again so that it'll stay nice and sealed. No water getting into that thing at all. So this flight controller is now ready to be installed. I mean, it needs to dry, so it's going to sit here overnight, and I'll get install it tomorrow. But everything's prepped and ready to go. All I need to do now is solder. All the pads where I'm going to solder are nice and clean. So it's ready to go. And then next thing I'll do is flip over my ESC, and I'll show you how to seal that one up. I'm going to switch to the screw that's over here by the plug. That's because this is leaning, gangster lean style, and I don't want it to drip down onto my plug. I'd rather it end up on a pad where I can scrape it off nice and easy. I think that's as far as the screw goes. Alright, let's get you fixed up where you can see again, and squirt. I'm going to put it right across the fets. Around here. That's an LED in the center. It's a fully RGB LED on this chip. Alright, I think the last thing I have to do on this ESC now is the edge of these pads. So I'm just going to butter up a little bit. And then try to get rid of the excess, and then wipe. Get them right down that edge. There we go. Alright, that's perfect. That thing's ready to go. So now I'm going to take the... Let's see, here's my hand. I'm going to take this top back off. I'm going to put this top back on. And I imagine I should probably go rinse this thing out, because if I leave it full of silicone, I'm going to have to dig it out later. And here on the ESC, the last step, don't forget this one, is to take your heat plate and press it back in. So I want it to go in right on its original location and press it in nice and firmly. This is going to make the conformal coat as thin as possible by giving it good solid press. And I just press it in and leave it. and that'll glue itself right back in place so it doesn't come back off, and it will transfer the heat nice and easily because you made it so thin underneath there, and you should be good to go. So now all I have to do is wait. I'm gonna let these guys dry overnight. I'll clean this. Yeah, you can see that. I'm gonna clean that up before I let this all dry, that way my desk doesn't get too bad. And yeah, when tomorrow I'll be able to solder everything up, and then after I've soldered in my motor wires and my leads, and I've soldered on my receiver and my 04, then I'll just come back over and after I've tested, I'll just paint everything. Alright, well that's KotKing. Got it in my site. They are 13 bucks a tube. It comes with a little stick to apply it and a little USB cover that you don't need. This little funnel is pretty handy. I like it. You definitely do need this. It makes it really easy to get it exactly where you want it. I will say I wish that I could leave it on and there was a little cap for this. So I think the obvious thing to do is 3D print one, right? This looks like it's resin printed, which is pretty nice. So yeah, I think that's the next step. Maybe I can design a quick little cone to sit on top of that and then open source it, and you can have a 3D printed lid to go with them. So you can keep this on and just leave it on. I think that would probably work just fine. Anyway, how do you waterproof your drones? What do you use? What's your favorite? So which conformal coating should you use? This was my favorite for a long time. I coated a lot of quads with MG Chemicals 422B. This stuff worked pretty decently, but it was thin and light duty. It's completely frozen in this bottle. But it, yeah, light duty. You stayed in the rain for a while. It would eventually, the rain would sog through it and it would fail. It seemed to fail more with more current. So like the harder you were pushing the motors, the more likely it was to fail in the rain. Basically the spark was jumping through the thin layer of coating. It wasn't isolating it enough. I would typically do 3 layers of this an hour apart to really coat up. But I mean, as you can see, you're doing the same process, but 3 times, which is no bueno. Other big issue I had with this was the rising price. When I started buying this stuff for the shop, it was $12 a bottle. It went up and up and up and up and up and up and up, and Amazon price gouged the shit out of it. And now I see it for like $34 and $37 for a bottle of this, which is absurd. The other thing is they killed this formula. 422B was so good for what it was. You could even dilute it with isopropyl alcohol. So if you put ISO in it, like if you had it already on your board, you could put ISO on your board to dissolve it with like a Q-tip and clear your pads. But they made this illegal. It's too toxic for California, and the new version is 422C, and it's garbage in my opinion. Its performance is mid like this, where it's just kind of waterproof, but likely to protect your board. But it didn't have the ability to dilute it with ISO or remove it with ISO. You had to use a special stripper, and that's no fun for me. You know, if you put isopropyl alcohol on the 422C, it turns like white and frosty and cracks and no longer protects anything. This stuff also tends to like chip and break off over time as another issue with it, but I do like that it's flexible, and so you can coat all the way up onto the wires and it'll kind of help reinforce your wires a little bit. Used this stuff for years. If we could still get this, I'd probably still carry it in the shop, but I'm not gonna just keep charging more and more for it. That's not the way I operate. This is a cool one. This is from Switzerland. This is from Dread FPV, his silicone-based waterproofing. He made this tester for me, and I like it. The first thing I love is that he he got the container, nailed it. This is like the original 422B containers where the lid has a brush built in. This guy does not. This is one of the newer batches. The lid having this built in is perfect because the brush never dries out. So you always have a brush that you can use. It never dries out. It never gets nasty. It never has to be replaced. It just is perfect. I don't know why they don't all do this. This is so good. Thank you, Dread. Also, like 422B, this one can be diluted with isopropyl alcohol. If you're in Europe, you should definitely check this stuff out. It's a lighter duty, we're like 422B, but because he's got that compatibility with everything else, being able to dilute it with ISO is really, really useful. You know, you could probably save it before it gets to this point and put a little ISO in it and thin it up and then continue using it. Next up is what I would call the old king, worry-free. This is a thick, heavy-duty silicone. Brandon FPV made it for the community. Really, really appreciate that, dude. Thank you so much, bud. If you ever want to make it again, I'll be happy to rep it in my shop. But here's the big problem with it, is the expiration date. It's supposed to last about a year, and sometimes it would last a year, sometimes it would last less than a year. But I expect everything that I buy in FPV to last a year. Nah, that ain't even close to true. I wish that everything I bought in FPV would last a year. How about that? So yeah, it's a struggle with that one. It's cheap though, it's $10. And he came with a bunch of nice goodies. Had like little silicone USB plugs and a bunch of little tools, but again, this is the tool you need and you already have these. Also, his little applicators were so nice. It was like a lip balm case and it had like a nice flat surface. You could kind of spooge it onto the board and smear it with that applicator. Pretty good design. Also, this stuff is easy to take up, so rework is simple. If you cut it, you can just cut it with a fingernail or your propeller and peel it off. KotKing is very, very similar in that it's a thick rubber coating like that. You can peel it back with a fingernail. It doesn't ooze down into crevices and underneath buttons, so I think you can paint it right over the top of a button as long as it's not too thin. And you should be able to just peel it back when you're done. And I've even seen people take the plugs and plug them into their USB ports and then just paint this stuff over for like extreme, like if you want to go fly in a waterfall. I would definitely recommend doing that. You can take your cameras apart and coat the cameras as well, but that's a more permanent thing. And on DJI stuff, the 03 and the 04 Pro in particular, if you do that, you're basically fusing the casing together in glue and it's never going to open again. So if you break a MIPI cable, which is the most common failure point on those, then you're lost the camera. You need to replace the camera, and that's why I don't generally recommend people do the cameras on DJI's newer stuff, but you can. What else is on the market though? There's X30 spray from FlyWoo. I haven't had that in hand yet, but I've seen some real close-up and really good reviews. Madstech's got an excellent one where he actually gets a microscope out and looks at it and like scrapes it with like a fingernail and a tweezer and stuff to see how it reacts, and it just flakes off and disappears really quickly. It seems like a great light duty spray it in places where it's inconvenient to paint otherwise kind of situation. So if you've got a quad that's already built and you're not going to take it apart and paint the bottom of it, you could probably just pss, and it'd be better than nothing. Whoops is another place where I could probably see it being used, or even like the inside of your transmitter. If you got your case open to paint the shell or whatever, a little spray it around, get the board protected a little bit, because I'm out in the rain all the time. I've never had a problem with a transmitter getting wet, but I have flown in the fucking pouring rain a lot. What else? There's a bunch of off-the-shelf stuff that's not specifically for FPV either, like E6000, E7000, B4000. I've used a lot of them, and most of them are super, super permanent. So once you put them on, it is just like encased, and they work really well. But they're gooey. They have a longer cure time. They're thicker, harder. You know, you're not gonna be able to rework. So if I was banking a boat, I'd be all up in that E6000, making little tubs and just filling them with it. But yeah, for FPV stuff, not so much. There's also stuff like fluid barriers. Corrosion XHD is the one that I have the most experience using, and it's like a can and you spray it, and it's like a thick grease, almost like WD-30 or WD-40, but like way thicker and foamy. And so you can spray it like into your XT60 connector, and then it'll be waterproof. You can just stick it in the water and it's fine, and then you can plug an XT60 into it and then dip it in the water and it's fine, and then you can disconnect it and dip it in and it's still fine. So that's cool, because the fluid like heals itself or whatever, and but you re-up and respray it after so many uses or whatever. I use it on flight controllers and ESCs, and it worked, but it's a super greasy mess, and being in bandos and grass and trash and every dust, and you don't want a big greasy mess that collects things like that if you can help it. We're making a big enough mess of these things as we are. What else for coating? Man, those are really my tops. You can do like 2-part epoxies and stuff too, but again, it's permanent as hell, and you're not so if you're building a machine to go underwater and stay underwater, then that's fine. If you want to fly through the rain and it not stop you from flying, then I recommend KotKing. This is what I've been using for all my stuff now. I had been using this, and this was really good too. This is supposed to last 2 years, so we should get longer out of the tube, and if I don't spill it all, I usually get about 10 quads out of one tube. I did make a bit of a mess today, didn't I? Anyway, don't be discouraged by the rain. Fly every day, and coat every quad. This world is made of water, and wherever you go, your quad will find a way to get into that water. It's everywhere. I mean, even my whoops, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't need to coat that, and then it ends in the dog bowl, or it ends in the sink, or it ends in the toilets. It's like, oh, put all the toilet seats down before you start flying. Anyway, happy flying, boys. If you need some KotKing, I got it in the shop, $13 a tube. Ship it all over the world. I haven't found any country that don't let me ship it yet. So if you need some, I'm happy to send it. Anyway, have a great fucking day. Don't lose your quads in the water. Conformal coat and win. Fly high, motherfuckers.